Oh, you're finally here. Thanks for dropping them off for the triplets' milestone celebration. My mother-in-law, Ruby, went ahead and booked a fancy restaurant without even consulting me. When I arrived, she immediately grabbed the triplets from the stroller, smiling broadly. Come here, sweetheart. Today, Grandma and Daddy are going to celebrate with you. Jacob picked up our younger son and daughter, and together with Ruby, they headed into the restaurant, leaving me behind. From here on, it's just for the family, Ruby said, turning around with a beaming smile. I couldn't make sense of the situation, let alone say anything. Jacob stood silently behind her, his head hanging low. Oh, don't worry. The bill will be sent to you later, Ruby added, and then the door slammed shut, leaving me alone outside. I would never forgive them for this. With trembling fingers, I called my mother, Sarah. Hello, what's wrong, Camilla? I'm sorry, but can I come home right now? I asked. I had been holding back, but the moment I opened my mouth, tears poured out. Did something happen? Are you okay? Hearing her warm voice, I decided to tell her everything. After listening to my story, my mom firmly said, "Come back right now. Your father and I will be waiting for you." I was truly grateful to have parents like them. Hearing her words, I finally felt calm again. Just as I was about to call a cab, Ruby emerged from the restaurant, holding my eldest son behind her. Jacob followed, carrying our younger son and daughter. Your parenting must be awful, Camilla. They won't stop crying. Oh, and the celebration's over, so you can go home now. With that, they shoved the triplets back at me and went back into the restaurant as if nothing had happened. Even though this gathering was arranged to celebrate the triplets, apparently Ruby and Jacob were simply looking to enjoy a quiet meal together. You're such a useless wife. As long as I have Jacob by my side, he's all I really need. So, you can go on ahead home, Ruby said, her gaze icy. Jacob seemed completely under her control. I didn't want to be there any longer for obvious reasons. I took the triplets and got into a taxi. The triplets stopped crying as soon as they were in my arms. I vowed never to let Ruby or Jacob near my children again. When we arrived at my parents' house, my mom hugged the triplets and welcomed us inside. Camilla, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry for the trouble. It's okay. Don't worry about it, my mom said gently, encouraging me. My family now consisted of just my parents and my babies. On my way to my parents' place, I decided that I had to divorce Jacob as soon as possible. I was finally at a place where I felt welcomed and promised myself that I wouldn't go back to the house I once shared with Jacob. I had endured so much, but what happened today was the final straw. I also decided to stop providing financial support to Ruby. Jacob and I had been financially supporting Ruby, who lived alone, but to be precise, all that support came from my income as a freelance worker. Most people might assume my income was unstable. In fact, Ruby seemed to believe I wasn't earning much at all, but in reality, I was making twice as much as Jacob. With over a decade of experience as an editor, I had built a steady roster of clients. Of course, I was busy, but compared to my days at a publishing house, this was much more manageable. It was a workload I could handle while managing household chores. Jacob, on the other hand, earned relatively little for a systems engineer. He was supportive with parenting and a good father in that sense, but his salary had been steadily declining. It was only because of my earnings that we were able to send money to Ruby. But Ruby believed the financial support was coming from Jacob. Jacob is such a good son. He sends me $11,000 every month, she would say. But as for me, Ruby never made an effort to understand my career or the hard work I put in. Every time we handed her money, she had complaints, but she accepted the money as if it were her right and never expressed any gratitude. I wanted to tell her the truth, that the money was coming from me, but I knew she wouldn't believe it, so I kept quiet all this time. Meanwhile, Jacob acted as though the money was solely coming from his income. I just wanted to make life easier for Mom, he said. He probably had some pride as a son that he wanted to uphold. I couldn't live with Jacob any longer. I had tried to hold on for the triplets' sake, but I finally told my mother that I was going to divorce him. I don't want to give them another penny. Camilla, You've endured so much. Just leave him as soon as you can.
You can stay here with us. Thank you, I said.
The next day, I started preparing for the divorce with my mom's support. That's when Jacob started calling me. I assumed he was worried about me not returning and wanted to talk. I didn't feel like answering, so I ignored his calls. But Jacob didn't give up. Soon, there were dozens of missed calls on my phone. Even so, I couldn't bring myself to answer. Is it Jacob? My mom asked. Yeah, but I just can't deal with him right now. Don't force yourself. If you ignore him long enough, he'll give up. You're right.
Thanks, I said.
I decided to forget about Jacob and focus entirely on taking care of the triplets. The next day, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. I was feeding the triplets, so my mom went to answer the door. But as soon as she checked the monitor, her expression froze. Camilla? What's wrong? It looks like Jacob is here.
What?
I looked at the monitor in surprise and saw Jacob standing there, looking completely exhausted. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his usually neat beard was unkempt. Camilla, please hear me out. I didn't even want to hear his voice, so I immediately told him to leave. I don't want to see you anymore. Stop coming to my parents' house. Please don't say that. I'm begging you. Jacob lowered his head as he pleaded. No matter how coldly I dismissed him, he refused to leave. I used to love him, but now I could hardly stand seeing his face. Still, I thought this might be the only opportunity to give him a piece of my mind. Although I was reluctant, I opened the door and faced Jacob. Why are you here now? I asked sharply. Jacob desperately struggled to find the words. Camilla, I'm so sorry. Please come back. He was trembling as he begged me. It was clear he hadn't expected me to leave with the triplets and go straight to my parents' house. I don't know what to do now that you're gone. I was wrong. I kept fighting with my mom and hurt you, Jacob said, his eyes welling up with tears as he apologized. But his words didn't reach me. I told you over and over again, didn't I? Why do you always take your mother's side? You knew I was already planning the triplet celebration, didn't you? As I pressed him, Jacob shrank back. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I thought you'd just go along with whatever my mom wanted, even if you didn't like it. Of course not. Do you even realize how much you hurt me? I'm truly sorry. I'll never hurt you again. Please come back, Jacob pleaded desperately. The sound of the triplets crying came from inside the house. My mom was trying to comfort them, but they still felt unsettled without me. Hearing their cries, Jacob's face grew even more pained, but even seeing that, my feelings didn't change. I remained calm and detached. It's too late for gratitude now. You weren't there for me when I needed you most. I don't even need your apologies anymore. When I said this, Jacob froze, unable to respond. Sweat was forming on his forehead, and his lips trembled. But even seeing that, my resolve didn't waver. I'm not sending your mom any more money. I thought I was doing the right thing, but if this is the result, I should never have done it at all.
Please don't say that.
Jacob's face stiffened at my words. With his income alone, he wouldn't be able to support his mother. Your mom still thinks she's getting the money from you, doesn't she? She's relying on your income, so you'll just have to figure it out from now on. Jacob's face twisted in despair as I said that. Why don't you just tell her the truth, that all the money you've been sending came from me?
What?
No, I can't, Jacob said, overwhelmed by guilt and shame. His face turned red as he struggled to respond. You might have your pride, but the truth will come out eventually, I replied firmly. Hearing this, Jacob slumped his shoulders and avoided my gaze. I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared and handed them to him. Jacob's eyes widened in shock. Camilla, what is this? Sign this right now. I can't live with you anymore. Don't say that. The kids are still so young. You might have helped with parenting, but you couldn't even stand up for your own wife. I can't trust you with the kids. Please sign the papers. As I said this, Jacob turned pale and signed the divorce papers with trembling hands. After that, he trudged away in defeat. His back looked smaller than ever. The next day, the divorce was finalized. With my newfound freedom, I turned my focus to raising the triplets and starting a new life. However, the day after the divorce, someone pounded loudly on my parents' front door. The noise startled the triplets, and they all started crying at once. My mom went to answer the door, but came back looking pale. "Camilla, it's Jacob's mom." "What?" I exclaimed, shocked. I headed to the door, only to hear Ruby shouting furiously. "Camilla, how could you abandon Jacob? Taking my son and grandchild away is unforgivable." Ruby was trembling with rage, hurling accusations at me without mercy. "This all happened because you failed in your duties as a wife." "Wait a minute. Do you even know how much I've endured while living with Jacob? As a matter of fact, I was the one supporting both you and Jacob." Ruby was silent for a moment, but then raised her voice to argue. "Oh, don't act like you supported us when you were living off Jacob's income. That's not true. I was the one earning most of the money. Even the money sent to you every month came from my paycheck." Ruby's eyes widened, and she opened and closed her mouth, stunned. That can't be. I thought it was all from Jacob."
"No, it was all from me. But that ends now."
"You'll have to rely on Jacob from now on. I'm not getting involved anymore." Ruby sank to her knees, looking utterly defeated. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." Her apology came far too late and felt hollow. "Your apology means nothing. We're strangers now." With that, I firmly told Ruby to leave. "If you don't leave, I'll have no choice but to call the police." Ruby quickly got up and staggered out of the house. I could faintly hear her muttering, "Why did it come to this?" But I felt nothing. Afterward, child support payments from Jacob started coming in. Most of his money now went toward living expenses and child support. It seemed the payments to Ruby had completely stopped. Without the financial support she had relied on, her life grew much harder. With her spending habits, Ruby reportedly started working part-time at a supermarket. I once caught a glimpse of her at work, being scolded by a younger manager. Jacob, too, seemed to be struggling. Unable to afford rent, he moved back in with Ruby. Meanwhile, I continued living at my parents' house with the triplets. With my mom's help with childcare and chores, I was able to work more easily than before. The triplets were growing steadily, smiling at me and my mom every day. These children gave me the strength to keep going. I swore to myself that I would never let anyone take them from me again. Every day is hard, but I will do everything I can as their mother. I held the triplets tightly and resolved to move forward.